And perhaps the funnest and the deepest both is what happens when, having been in the suburbs and the fields and the mud and the rain of the punishments that are outside the city of Dis, which is, I think I already said, but I'll say again, the cities of Hades. Dis is the Latin name for Hades. That's the god that's in charge of the afterlife. And Dis is really a city. It's what I call Sin City, and translating it over into English. But there's something fascinating, and as I say, deep and funny going on at the wall around the city. And I just got to that and had a chance to mention it, but I didn't get a chance to explain why it is what it is and why it's important. But let's see if you remember, and if I remember right where I was. This is a city, and now Dante has a certain view of this city, and Virgil has a different view of the city. Virgil, well, I'm going to just go over it. So we're in the Inferno, Canto 11, line 20. I'm trying to get used to the fact that I'm going to tell you cantos and lines from now on. So Virgil happily explains to Dante on the middle of 140, "My son," he began, "there are below this wall 3 smaller circles," and so forth and so forth. "And according as you understand their sin at sight, I will explain how each is imprisoned and why." Now, you wouldn't think that crucial thing in that sentence is the imprisoned, because Virgil thinks it's obvious. And I imagine you and I would too, that this place in the middle of hell is full of sinners, and they obviously wouldn't want to be there being tortured the way they are, so they must be imprisoned. And there are guards on the wall around the city. But is it a prison? Now is where you're supposed to, I think, I just had time to blurt out at the end the important answer to that question. Because, well, is it a prison? What else could it be if not a prison? Well, oddly enough, anybody? Surely some of you must have read it. I mean, I don't know any critics who have seen it, so there's no reason why you should see it, except that it's probably the most important thing in the Inferno, is what happens at the wall of the city of Dis. Well, Dante understands it differently. He doesn't think that it's a prison. So let's look on Canto 9, when it first makes its appearance. The first thing we hear about it on page 91, Canto 9, line 105. Yes, keep me, whoever said that. Back to the lines. And so we entered, never mind that for a minute, just line 105. Those burning fortress walls. It's a fortress. It's not a prison. And that's, what could that be? Why would it be a fortress? And who's it trying to keep out? It's obviously trying to keep somebody out. And it's called a rebellion up in line 92. They're rebelling, the people in there. They're, and the Virgil says, why do you say, no, the angel says, is that who it is? I think so. Yes, the angel at the top, and not 85. Now I have to jump ahead of the story, but I don't want to. So it's a fortress to keep God and the angels out. That's already pretty amazing. Why would these criminals of various degrees all agree that they should build this fortress and man the walls to keep everybody out, particularly God and the angels? So the angel who's coming to let them in, let Virgil and Dante in there, even though the people running on the wall don't want them in. I see that I think I got to back up at one step, because that's part of the fun of it, and I don't remember now whether I did it last time. But they have to call in the angel for help. But what happens first is that Virgil says, this is what I want to get back to. So you're getting this in a funny order. So they get up to this rust-red city, and Virgil says that that's where they're all imprisoned, and they have to go through the city to get to the bottom of hell, to get to the path that leads through the mountain of purgatory to get to paradise. So they have to go into the city. So Virgil says, okay, I'll take care of it. And now I'm trying to find that. I didn't mark it because I think I'd said it already last time. Virgil marches off full of confidence, saying to Dante, don't worry about it, we'll get there as soon as I get a chance. Now help me find it. Can't have gone far. Come on, somebody help me find it. So Virgil says, I'll let you in. Somebody found it? Good. Canto 8. Aha, I hadn't gone back far enough. Way back there. Yes, there they are. Thank you. It's a city called Dis. Virgil is explaining on about line 65, and it's hell's metropolis, and so forth. And now skipping down to 3 cantos from the bottom of that page, that is, we're in Canto 8. I don't see, about 80. Above the gates, more than 1,000 shades of spirits purged from heaven for its glory cried, who invades? See, it's a fortress. You can't invade a prison. I mean, that would just let the people out. But those people don't want to be out. They want to keep everybody else out. So it looks like invasion. And Virgil, now we're on line about 100, says, take heart, nothing can take our passage from us when such a power has given warrant to it. And meaning, look, what these people are going to cause trouble, but that's all right. We've been sent by Beatrice, so everything's going to be all right. And then this is all back to before the part I jumped in at. So he marches up to what he takes to be the prison. Dante performs a little game. He doesn't claim he hears what Virgil says. Virgil says something, presumably, open the gates in the name of Beatrice and God. And what happens next? They all run in and slam the door in his face. We have to figure out. Dante makes you think a lot, because you don't know what he said. All you know is Virgil marched off and said, don't worry, it's all under control, I'll just take care of it. And he says something, and bang, all the guardians rushed inside and they slammed the door in his face, and he doesn't know what to think. In fact, he never figures out what to think. So he's stunned ever since from there on in a way. So still in Canto 8, Dante says, line about 110, I could not hear my Lord's words, but the pack that gathered around him suddenly broke away, howling and jostling, and went pouring back, slamming the towering gate in his face. And then he was all depressed. It showed in his pace. He was all sad. He lost his assurance, and he doesn't understand what's going on. And then, that's where I'm now back to where I was. He doesn't understand what's going on because he thinks they're in prison. But Dante understands what's going on, sort of at least, because he understands that it's a fortress. So naturally, they're not going to let him in. They're there to keep something out. So we're back to line 105 in Canto 9, where Dante says, I, eager to learn what new estate of hell those burning fortress walls enclosed. Virgil never figures that, but we can figure it out. So why in the world would these people want to keep God out? That's a very seemingly simple maybe question, but it's very deep and complicated and has the whole of the assumptions about the universe and good and evil and everything else built into it. You've got to go back and understand that this is the understanding of being in Dante is creation, that you've got a good creator God, that the creator God has created the universe, and this is what I haven't told you yet, in such a way that everybody gets what they deserve, then that means that everybody has a certain amount of desires, and if they follow up on those desires, well, no, that's the wrong way to put it already. If they just respond to the way things are attractive to them without interfering, God has set it up so that they will get satisfaction. Because the world, Augustine says it best, all souls are restless until they find rest in thee, Augustine says to God. What that means in a way that everybody is not satisfied until they open themselves to the attractiveness of all the things in God's universe and find, so to speak, their calling, whatever it is that's calling them that is genuinely attractive, is made to be genuinely satisfying. So they're all sort of made, it's hard for me to find the right metaphor. Every soul is already sort of pre-adjusted to have certain desires, which, if it lets itself just follow them, eventually, sometimes it'll go wrong in following them. Those are the people who have to go through purgatory. But if they finally follow their desires, they will get fulfillment, because their desires, that's what I'm trying to explain, are pre-attuned, pre-harmonized, built in, I'm sure there's a better word for this, by God, and the universe is built by God to satisfy those desires. And all you have to do is get out of the way. And if you get your willfulness and your ideas about what you should be doing out of the way, and just respond to the calling that you got built in, you will get, so to speak, the answer, which is built into the universe. Now, why would somebody not like that? Because the people in this fortress, I'm trying to give you the background, are in this universe created by God, which is set up to give everybody the complete satisfaction that they are built to get. And who would be against that? Well, the way I described it on purpose is it doesn't leave much leeway for an interesting person to have any interesting views about what they want to be and what they desire and what kind of lives they want to lead. It's all built in. They each got in them one possible life that is already set up, if you just relax, to go toward the object which will completely satisfy it. Just go with it. Well, maybe the people inside are inside the wall, inside the fortress, don't want to just go after God's pre-planned, pre-programmed. That's the word I was looking for. They're all programmed to go in some direction or other. God's already pre-programmed them and fixed the world to satisfy. Maybe they don't want to be like machines. Maybe they don't want to be like homing missiles for Augustine. They'll be restless until they get their target. One way to try to understand it is what Milton has his Satan say in Paradise Lost, which is, Satan says, better to rule in hell than serve in heaven. That means it's better to lead a miserable life than just be pre-programmed to automatically do what if you do it will make you happy. Now that's important. That's central to the poem. Good, yeah.
This picture given of what it takes to...
Yeah, exactly. Well put. Did you hear that? Her slogan, don't let your will get in the way of God's plan. Yes.
Is that supposed to be assumed as the world that Dante that's the medieval Christian world at this time, as informed by these by Augustine?
Yeah, well, yeah, and Aristotle's in the background because, in Aristotle too, there is sort of everything has its natural place and if you leave it alone, it goes to its natural place, and people also have their natural desires and attractions, and they go, and then you add, in Aristotle, it would be sort of haphazard, but if because the universe isn't produced by a good God, it's down to every detail, for Aristotle, I don't think. But once you get the creator God in there now and take over Aristotle with St. Thomas and say, yeah, Aristotle's got it right. The prime mover in Aristotle is really God, and God is totally fulfilling for every person is set to fulfill every person in the world if they will just follow his call. Then you convert it into this. Now I'm interrupted. Go ahead.
Because the picture just, I suppose this makes sense. The picture just sounds very different from the picture we were given by the New Testament itself, where.
Yes. Yes, I think that's the fact that they've lost most of the understanding of being of the New Testament, and the whole idea that you can have a totally fulfilling. Let me see if I can get it right now. The New Testament is telling you the way the universe is. There's a totally fulfilling Savior, and if you get into the right mood, right relation to that Savior, you'll be totally fulfilled. Now it's gotten so that it's not focused on one Savior anymore, but spread all over the produced world, the created world, by this good God. And I want to add something now. Notice that that you have to get in the right relation to this one Savior, this incarnation of God in the New Testament to do it right. Whereas not only is that not the story I just told you, where everybody gets their own particular object of desire, and if they let it be the one that they're designed for, they'll be fulfilled. It's even weirder. Jesus plays no role in the Dante story. You just don't notice it when you're reading it the first time or second. Jesus isn't there. Now, there's something there which I may get to today, which does the job of Jesus. But that doesn't fit very well with the story I just told you, which is the St. Thomas Aristotle story. The St. Thomas Aristotle story doesn't have a place in it for the Savior. It's got the whole universe sort of in sync, harmony with a whole bunch of people, I think. And I could read you the places where that gets explained. But the funny thing is, the story I just told you about the universe and how the created world works and how it fits with you and your desires, or your getting in sync with it, I don't think that story is ever told in the Divine Comedy. And now we're back to Virgil and the wall again. The thing is so complicated. Dante is either a complete fool or a genius. I think that he's a genius. Well, but he's got this interesting idea that all of the stuff that's happening in the Divine Comedy gets explained by Virgil. And Virgil doesn't understand any of it. So that makes it very hard if you're somebody trying to understand it. Because all the critics I know of, not that I know very many, but few is enough, just pay attention to what Virgil says. And I'm not even asking you to read that carefully. It's all kinds of stuff. For instance, and the wall is the perfect example. Dante wants to know what the wall is. Why are these people in a fortress? Why are they trying to keep us out? So forth. Virgil tells him completely uninteresting sort of gobbledygook about all that. When Dante asks Virgil what the wall means, he gets an answer in terms of Thomistic St. Thomas jargon, and it doesn't explain the wall at all. The wall plays no important role in Virgil's account of the wall. And Dante very politely but firmly keeps asking Virgil, saying, you haven't really explained it yet. And I assume that this is a brilliant book, because why is Dante doing this? Well, on the level of sort of doctrine, he's showing you the difference between the Stoic Roman understanding of being and not the Christian one. Well, I got to think about it. The Stoic one, that is the Aristotelian one, even more complicated. Because Dante accepts St. Thomas. I'm not even sure whether Dante understands the wall. But we better put that aside for a minute. Virgil accepts this whole St. Thomas bunch of explanations, and Dante is clear that they don't work. Dante doesn't claim to understand why they don't work, and he doesn't claim to understand even sort of that they don't work. He sees that they don't work. He sees this wall, and he sees that it's a fortress, and he sees that on Virgil's account, it's not supposed to be a fortress, it's supposed to be a prison. And therefore, you can see at the wall, this is what I'm trying to say among other things, that Virgil has got it wrong about everything. Because now I'm getting confused myself because it's so complicated. Virgil's got it wrong because he's got Greek Aristotelian categories in which to put it. And that's certainly wrong. Dante doesn't have any preconceptions, and Dante sees that Virgil is wrong because he sees that what Virgil says doesn't fit the landscape, of which the wall is the most salient case. But there's lots of stuff going on all the time, if you're looking for it, where Virgil is getting it wrong. And whenever Virgil gets it wrong, Virgil gives a nice explanation in Stoic Roman terms, and then Dante sees that doesn't work. But let's see what happens here. So he's asking about the wall in Canto 11. And Virgil makes a speech, all wrong. My son, and I've just read up to there, let's see, there are below this wall 3 smaller circles, each in degree and so forth, and according, you may understand their sin, I will explain how each is prisoned. See, he's off to a bad start. Malice is the sin most hated by God, and the aim of malice is to injure others, whether fraud or violence, but since fraud is the vice of which man alone is capable, and animals can't defraud each other, God is most against fraud. It's nonsense, all of that. It's nonsense because it's a silly explanation of why God would be against fraud is because people can do it and animals can't. But it's more nonsense because it's explaining how people are imprisoned there, but it doesn't even explain why they're imprisoned there exactly. Well, I guess it does, sort of. It says, here's a list of bad things, and people who do them get put in this prison. But of course, that doesn't explain anything. So what's the conclusion of this? That it's a hard book because Dante, important places in the book, like here at the wall, but again in the very middle of the book, there's a whole long account of the whole structure of hell, which Ciardi reproduces in the book conscientiously, but it's all wrong. It isn't reflecting the Christian view. It doesn't fit the landscape. It has big distinctions where there are no distinctions and no distinctions where there are big distinctions, like the wall. So what are you supposed to do? Well, I think what you're supposed to do is see from the structure of the Inferno what God's plan really is. Because after all, God created the Inferno, and it's got to have the big barriers or gaps or draw. It's got to draw. God's going to draw the important lines, like the wall again, and you, the reader, and that's why it's so hard and fun. And I hope Dante knew what he was doing, and that's one reason why it's a world hit for 1,000 years. Is that Dante understands that there are these two different understandings. That gets hard again. Dante's doing is two things in the book. Dante is the pilgrim who's going through all this, who doesn't understand it, and who keeps asking Virgil to explain it. But Dante is also the one who sees all these important distinctions that Virgil can't understand and asks that they be explained. And you'll see in the very, very middle of the book that Dante finally asks for the explanation of the whole thing, but he doesn't get the explanation I just told you. He gets this very convoluted explanation in terms of all these categories of fraud and guilt and so forth, and instead of finding this illuminating, Dante falls asleep. I take that to be because Dante sees that that's not helping any. Okay, so now, so now your job, or my job, to help you, and maybe I haven't got it either yet, but is to see from the events and the landscape what's really going on in this world created by this Christian God. And one thing you can certainly do, and I can help, is don't pay any attention to what Virgil says. You've got all these charts and long nonsense like the one I just read, only much, much longer and more complicated. Virgil is explaining everything. But Dante isn't buying it. And you're not supposed to buy it, I think. Yeah.
I think I understand the conception of sin entailed by doing this as a fork.
About what? Yeah, that's right. I haven't said very clearly yet what sin is, but yes, whatever it is, it's a fortress, and what? Go ahead.
So, Virgil is misunderstanding sin by doing it as a prison. What is that? How is he understanding sin?
What is Virgil thinking, that he should think sin was a prison? I have no idea. Virgil is an idiot. How can we get inside of his mind and try to figure out what he's thinking? Yes, what would be? Well, we think, so we ought to be able to figure it out. Sin is, well, let's figure out first what the right thing to think. Well, I said it already, but let's review it to get a start. What are these people doing? They're rebelling against God in order to have free will, in order to have autonomy, in order to make up their own minds about their lives and their callings. They don't want to be pre-programmed homing missiles toward God. They want to be, for instance, who are the people inside the wall? Well, the really paradigm people are the homosexuals, for instance. They just don't buy the idea that they should be interested in the opposite sex and only one person of the opposite sex and only maybe to have children, whatever. That they don't want to go along with that story. So in the Inferno anyway, they are neither heterosexual nor monogamous. They're cruising around in packs. But Dante is very interested in them because some of his best friends and his favorite teacher are in those packs. But one thing is sure, they have taken it on themselves to give their life the kind of meaning they want to give it, even if it means having to do it under this punishment, but flakes of fire are falling on a desert in which these homosexuals are running around. I forget because I didn't know I was going to talk about it, whether I assigned that. You should, if you want to follow, you could just look up the section. But who else would you expect to find in there as terrific cases of people who have just gone against what is clearly God's plan for them? Well, the suicides are in there. You can't go much further against God's plan, which is how to give you total satisfaction, which He's programmed in, than committing suicide. So all the people inside the wall, just a second, I'll get that. Yeah, all the people inside the wall have set up their lives on their own terms and rejected the whole claim on them. Is that any help? So this is a rebellion. That's what he calls it in here. And that's what, and the idea is to have a space, which is Sin City, where you can take responsibility for your own life. It sounds pretty honorable. and in the latest Kantian language, which hasn't been written yet when Dante writes this, it's called autonomy, where you give your own solution to what's the meaning giving, what meaning your life has, and what you ought to be doing. For those who are going to go on in philosophy, you'll hear a lot about how great Kant is and how great autonomy is, to be free to give your life whatever meaning you choose. Well, for Dante, autonomy is the name. You could put it over the door to this fortress, because the fortress says, "Stay out, God. We're going to choose our own lives and give our own lives meaning." And from Dante's point of view, that's the general feature of sin. So it turns Kant upside down, or Kant has turned it upside down, which they're totally opposed to each other. One of them says, choose your own life and give your own law to yourself, and the other one says, make yourself open to the creator of the universe, who has your best interests at heart and will lead you to total happiness. Okay, now, does that help somebody? Tyler. Yes, willfully opposing God's will so as to will what you will. So as to will what you will, right.
But still, I mean, I don't understand what sin would be if it wasn't.
What? Well, that's a good question. It's not a question that Dante is very interested in answering, and I'm not really interested in answering it either, but it's a perfectly sensible question, because we've got all these people in prisons. Why are they in prisons? They've done things to cut the society, and the retribution makes them have to pay for it, or they're dangers to society, and we have to keep them out of people's backyards and shopping malls doing bad things. Do we need a story about what view of sin would require that there be prisons, that prisons be very important? We've got it, whatever it is. I don't think that's what interests Dante. I mean, the fact that Virgil thinks they're in prison, I'm trying to think about that. That seems a natural thing. They're threats to society, I think, is what he would say. I'm trying to give a kind of Roman answer. They don't fit in. They're not pious, like Aeneas in Virgil, who's devoted to obeying the law. They don't obey the law. They're selfish, and therefore they're dangerous. I'm just making things up. Yeah. Say that again.
How can there be this Indian inferno?
Well, the angels rebelled. I mean, the bad angels. I mean, they're following the Bible. Satan organized an army, and I'm filling in the missing piece, which Milton filled in, that they'd rather be autonomous in hell. That is, they'd rather be rule in hell than serve in heaven. God just created the world. I see. And you want to know why God created the inferno? God created these angels. Let's talk about the fallen angels. And they could have been blissfully singing the praise of God for eternity. But they didn't like that. That was boring and degrading. So they rebelled. Once they rebelled, there was a big war. This is all Bible talk that Milton got. And they lost, naturally, since God is all-powerful and those fallen angels weren't. So God dug this big hole and put them all in it. And then comes the funny part. Instead of being miserable, which they should have been, they were happy that they didn't have to pay attention to God anymore, that they could they could do whatever they wanted, as long as they just chose it and stuck to it. So that's how it got there. Is that any help?
Didn't he create that audience event?
Well, they've got free will. I mean, you're all sort of asking to repeat the Bible story. Haven't you heard this? I mean, that it's in the Bible. God created these angels, and then the angels rebelled because they would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. That's the only answer you get. I mean, the answer is supposed to be something like, God's in a bind. He doesn't want to make animals that are, or homing missiles. He wants to make free autonomous beings that choose to worship him. And then he does. He makes free autonomous beings that can choose to worship him, and they choose not to worship him. And that's the only story. Anybody got a better story?
What is the honesty? I think you're integrating direct. We're saying there's a God who created everything involved in it. We're also saying he creates human beings for capable of beauty as well, right? So there's a deep question how all there is all knowing, all powerful God, the greatest thing eternally.
Yeah, and the answer is supposed to be to make them really good, he's got to give them freedom. And once he gives them freedom, they can use it against him.
No, we don't harm the coming back. Should have been able to create this being.
Yeah, but then he would have a bunch of automatons that loved him. He wants to be freely loved. And then once he gets freely loved, he could also be freely rejected. Well, anyway, we shouldn't spend our time on it. But the moral for you all is, don't waste a neuron or a minute of your time trying to understand the nonsense that Virgil is spouting every once in a while to explain what's going on. Because if you look carefully, you'll always see that Dante is questioning it and falling asleep during it or whatever. I was about to say one bit more. No, that's fine. You just don't believe Virgil. You look at the landscape and the big distinctions. And what a lot of the people in paradise say that you aren't reading, saints have lots of views about these things. You look to all that to find out what's really going on. It makes sense you don't look to a Stoic poet from Rome to find out what's going on in a universe created by a Christian creator. Yeah.
In the world, within the walls, are imprisoned by their responsibility.
They're imprisoned because of their responsibility for the choices. Yes, but you can even say, never mind their choices. I mean, it isn't as if they've chosen bad things. They're imprisoned because they've chosen to choose. They've chosen to decide what the basis of their life should be and what they want to be. I mean, take the homosexuals and the suicides as typical examples. It isn't just that they've done something wrong. They've done something which goes against the very reason they were supposedly created or something like that. That's rebellion again. I don't think you can say anything more. We've sort of had it over here already. They were given free will and they used it to rebel, and God won a war and threw them in this hole in the ground and put a wall around them, and oddly enough, they're happy with it. They rather be there than singing God's praise for eternity. Okay, I can't do better, but I'm ready to try. But I mean, I think mainly we better go on. So now we get this talk which I read about violence and fraud and so forth, but that doesn't answer at all the question, what is the meaning of the wall? Which is what Dante has just been asking. Let's see now. And now we get a new complication though. But it's fun to have a complicated book. Dante is somehow either too polite or too stupid or something, because he gets these irrelevant explanations. They don't satisfy him. And then he says, like at the bottom, like line 70 roughly in Canto 11, Master, I said, the clarity of your mind impresses all you touch. I see quite clearly the order of this dark pit of the blind. Well, that's a complicated thing. He does see the order. Virgil has talked about malice and fraud and violence and which one is worse than which and why, but the order is irrelevant. It's like saying, instead of the essence of something, some accidental characteristic of something. So take a medieval example. You can say man is a rational animal. That applies to all men, and you get lots of people, and you get lots of mileage, understanding of some of their behavior. Or you could say human beings are laughing animals. That's another unique feature of human beings. But it doesn't explain anything. I mean, you can't understand human goodness or badness or anything useful. Well, Virgil has got those kind of descriptions. He's got descriptions which fit in some way the order of things. He just gave you this list of what's worse, why is fraud worse than malice, worse than violence. I never can even remember them. Anyway, he's got some descriptions like that, but they don't explain anything. And now what happens when Dante says, Master, I'm impressed by the clarity of what you've been saying and the order of the dark pit. And then, this is what, I swear, the more you read it, the more fun it is. Dante, having just said to Virgil, boy, do you explain brilliantly how all this order is there. The very thing that Ciardi loves to make charts of. Isn't that wonderful? And then he goes right on at the bottom of 105. So he says, but tell me, those who lie in the swamp's bowels, those who the wind blows about, those who the rain beats, those who meet and clash, those are the sex committed people like Paula and Francesca, and the gluttons and the materialists. If you had time, you would have been reading all about them. They are outside the wall. They're in the march. And now Dante says, and why are they not punished in the rust-red city? He's saying, but you just haven't explained the wall. You've given me lists of a whole ordered list of bad things that people do. Now tell me why there's that big line there with these people all defending it like a fortress. What's that got to do with what you just said? And Virgil gets rather huffy about it. He says, why does your understanding stray so far from its own habit? And so forth. Have you forgotten your ethics? That is, he's been giving the list of sins in their order, sins of bad deeds in their order of badness that Aristotle would give, which has no place in it for rebellion. But Virgil hasn't got any sense of that. He says, have you forgotten your ethics? Your ethics states the three main dispositions of the soul that lead to these offenses. And that's why it's organized, I'm just paraphrasing, in incontinence, which is outside the wall, but he doesn't care about that, and malice and bestiality. That's true that those three are listed, are bad in that order. The incontinent people are pretty nice, like Paula and Francesca. The malice people are pretty mean, but they're not eating their own children. The really bad people are really bad, but nothing about rebellion is in all that. So, now if you weigh this doctrine he's going on and recall exactly who they are whose punishment lies in the upper hell outside the wall, you will understand at once why they are confined. Well, I used to think, boy, is Virgil dense. We just discovered that it was a fortress. He just discovered he can't get in. And now he's still saying confined. Well, I wish it said that, but it isn't in the Italian. So Virgil isn't quite that stupid. So you will understand at once why they are, but it doesn't matter because he might as well have said confined because he hasn't changed his mind and seen that they're rebelling. So why are they here? He used to say imprisoned. Now he just says why they are here. And apart from these fierce others. So it's in why does less anger be down on them from the eternal mind? That you can understand that. Wait a minute. So that's on 90. And so forth, and then he starts lecturing again on physics, on all kinds of stuff, and he never answers. Did I see a hand? Okay, then we got to go on. I got carried away by all that. But notice, you've got the book, if you look at page 108, or very near 108, oh yeah, but there isn't any line numbers. That's why I have to hesitate here. I think it's probably very near 108. The chart, right after Canto, we've just been talking about, right after Canto 11. You see, look at the amount of complicated detail in there. You see and all of that stuff, which you could, study and memorize and think of examples of or disagree with. All of that is Virgil not answering the question, what's the crucial thing about the wall? And that crucial question is sort of, what's the worst thing people can do is be autonomous and use God's freedom against God, so to speak. That's not on that list. Okay, now we can go on again. So Dante's asking, and he never gets a good answer. from Virgil. He just gets, now you'd think, I just gotta keep stressing this, that somebody would have noticed that in the last 1,000 years and stopped repeating all this Virgil stuff in complicated charts and try to figure out what's really going on in God's universe by looking at these, at things like the wall. But I don't know if I sometimes fear for Dante. I don't, maybe nobody got it. Maybe Dante didn't have it. I'm not sure. But and you should check me. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm making a case so that you can, in your papers, for instance, rebel against my case. I mean, if you think that I've just misunderstood it and that Virgil's doing fine and so forth, then say so, and I'll read it and change my mind if I have to. But you've got to have something to think against. I'm giving you something to think against. So you get Virgil's ad hoc explanations. We've had all that now. So the Stoic philosophy has no place for this major division in hell. Virgil. People, in his Stoic philosophy, Virgil, I'm just sort of summing up what he thinks, get deflected by getting hooked on some very attractive something outside the wall, like sex or food or cars or whatever, or else they resist all this, and then they are put inside the wall. The only interesting thing that we get is that, not in Dante, I don't think, but in fact, St. Thomas, but not Aristotle, has two kinds of sin, carnal and spiritual. And that's turning toward the wrong thing, or turning away from God and God's creation. That's illuminating. Because then you can say, well, look, before the wall, you've got all these people who turn toward the wrong things. Howell turns toward Francesca, and the gluttons turn toward the food. And I used to have a neighbor who had a white BMW convertible who spent all his weekends shining it, and you can get hooked on material things like that. But at least St. Thomas sees that there are really two radically different sorts of sin, and one of them is this going after, by mistake, going after attractive things which aren't really satisfying. And one of them is a sort of rebellion, turning away from God's creation. And Dante, I think, Dante the author must know that. I mean, he knows his St. Thomas. And he builds it into hell, into the landscape, builds it with the wall in it, where rebellion is on one side of the wall and going after things that aren't satisfying is on the other side of the wall. Virgil, the author, builds it in. But Virgil, the pilgrim, doesn't know about it. So he only can tell you what he sees, like the wall. And he can ask good questions, like what is it and why is it there? But Dante can't give you an answer. You have to understand the answer, or go read St. Thomas in this case to find the answer. Okay, now I think I've said all that. So the ultimate sin, I'm just summing up here, but nobody says this. Well, Virgil, or St. Thomas, being a Christian, gets close. Is autonomy and holding back love for the sake of being self-sufficient and creating your own life in your own world. That's the ultimate sin. That's what the people in the wall have put up, a wall and made a fortress so that they can do that inside. And Virgil doesn't see that everybody is pulled towards God and total joy if they only would stop using their freedom to resist. That's what Dante's, that's what is the truth in this, from Dante's point of view. But the poet, but the pilgrim can't say it that way. Only the philosophers like St. Thomas get a clue. So let's see now. Wow, just discovered that I don't want to talk about that. Well, I better talk about it though, because I assigned it, and because I thought you'd be interested in it. So I just finished that. Finished it after much longer than I thought. But I hope it's important enough that it was worth the time. But now there's a whole other thing, and I'm skipping to the Ulysses, which is of course Odysseus in Latin. So there's a whole canto about what's Odysseus doing. He's in the Inferno for some reason. He's done something terribly wrong. It's a different sort of wrong than the kind of wrong. Well, that's interesting. It's a different kind of wrong than the examples I've just given you, like homosexuals and suicides. But it's another way that somebody could just rebel against the way that they should lead their lives. And Odysseus has done something very wrong within the Dante world. And what's he done? Well, he's given himself a goal, which is not to be pulled into eternal appreciation of the wonder, glory of God, of having what's called a beatific vision. He's not doing that. What's he doing? Well, he's doing something like exploring around to see other possible worlds and going but where no one has ever gone before. And he's doing that and sacrificing, in a sense, leaving Penelope and Telemachus to do it, and he's going to do it again even though he's home and so forth. So all this, so he's Odysseus is in there now for being a false counselor. Why is he? How would that? I haven't explained that this is being a false counselor. It's because he's such a good orator that not only does he have this view that the highest thing you can do is go around and explore other worlds, but he convinces his whole crew that that's what they should do. And that makes him a false counselor, because the highest thing for people to do, we're back to that again, is worship, praise, appreciate, get fulfilled by the Creator God. And of course, Odysseus can't do that, because one, he doesn't really want it. He wouldn't want to do that. He'd be inside the city even if, what am I trying to say? Odysseus is willfully doing this thing that he's doing, namely exploring other worlds, and he's doing it, and he would have to do it within the fortress, because it's a rebellion against what he's supposed to be doing. You see all this in 26. I don't want to spend long on it, but since I thought that once you've read the Odyssey, you ought to hear sort of what Dante's take on it is. So I'm reading 20, much easier for me to get the page number. So here we are, okay. No, it's not. 26. I want to just show you where here we are. Okay, it's 26 cantos. No, it's not. Well, let me, 223, I gotta give my own page numbers, and then maybe I will find you. Help me again, find me Odysseus. Somebody yell it out. Canto 36. Is that what you said? That 26, that's what I was looking at. I'm not very good at this. Let's try, I had 26 in front of me. Canto 26. This is dyslexia of some sort. I'm in Canto 26, and I don't see it. What line? 81? 220. So why am I? I'm in the purgatory. That would do it, wouldn't it? Okay, thanks. That's better than dyslexia. 26. Okay. I got to 25. I got to 20. He's in a flame. Now we're starting to see things on line 30. No, we're not seeing 20. Why am I? But look at this. The sodomites are there. We get a bonus. So in Canto 25, which I think I wanted to add to the assignment, but I got my thing at home, but I will add it to the assignment. There are the homosexuals who are running around in packs, and his favorite teacher, Brunetto Latini, is there, and he goes and runs under the burning fire on the sterile desert, which is the punishment for these people, to be near this old teacher of his whom he loves and admires. But of course those people are inside the city. They weren't supposed to be running around cruising like that, and therefore they have to go inside the fortress. Now I finally find 26. Now I want to find line what? He talks about how he runs after his friend there. But I'm trying to find Odysseus. What happened to Odysseus? My page 223. Okay. Yes, that's where I'm trying to be. Okay. Now, now we're in Canto 26. I don't know why I couldn't see it. And we're on line 90. Not fondness for my son, Telemachus, of course, nor reverence for my aged father, I forget his name, nor Penelope's claim to the joys of love could drive out of my mind the lust, or really love, and there's nothing sort of bad about it, the lust bad, it's just that it's the wrong sort of goal, the love to experience the far-flung world and the failings and felicities of mankind. So he wants to see all the different ways that people can be happy and can be miserable. Now, Dante is very tempted by that. He almost leans over so far to see Odysseus in this flame that he almost falls into the punishment. There's always this hint in the background that Dante is probably bisexual and knows lots of these people and is involved with them in lots of ways and is saying so that they can understand that. He's saying it in a way that we can't understand it. So let's see now. So he gives them this talk on line 106. And this is why he's in there, for being a false counselor. This talk is so eloquent, because Odysseus is like that he talks them into doing something that they shouldn't do. He says, shipmates, I said, who through 100,000 perils had reached the west, do not deny to the brief remaining watch our senses stand, the experience of the world beyond the sun. Greek, that's other worlds. You were not born to live like brutes, but to press toward manhood and recognition. Manhood meaning sort of, I think, something like maturity. With the brief exhortation, I made my crew so eager for the voyage I could hardly have held them back from it when I was through. And so they start out going over the horizon, so to speak, looking for a new world, and what they happen to fall onto is purgatory. They're heading toward the mountain of purgatory. So they saw this tall peak, line 130 roughly, and then they got sunk. God sunk them. Now what exactly was wrong with them? Why shouldn't you go out and explore and see new worlds? Well, I think that's sort of interesting. I think if you believe that the world is created by one good God with one right order, and that's true of everything, that's the meaning of being. Beings are all good things created by God to fulfill us if we get in the right relation to them and so forth. Then going around leaving your wife and kid, which is the natural place to get your meaning and fulfillment, just to go out and see other worlds is a bad thing, because in a way there aren't any other worlds. All of reality is just part of creation, and it's all got the same structure. So he's seducing his sailors and himself to go off and do something which is a waste of time, which hurts them and hurts their loved ones and so forth. And he convinces them to do it, so he's a false counselor. And Dante is very tempted to do it too, to see other worlds. I think this is just an aside about history, about which I know practically nothing. But the Renaissance is coming in. Dante's still before it, but the idea that there's other worlds that could be seen and explored is going to come up as very important in the culture. And Dante is sort of ahead of his time, making Odysseus a kind of hero of the exploration of other worlds. When did they start exploring? When did the great explorers go? In the 1400s, right? In 1492, Columbus is leaving, and this is written supposedly in 1300. So a century later, people are taking off into other parts of the world. You look worried. Is that bad history? Good, terrific. It's all right in this period of Dante. So Dante is very tempted by the fact that there could be interesting other worlds. And he convinces all of his followers to believe that there are interesting other worlds. But that's very un-Christian, since everything everything you need to know about the world is already in this one, because there isn't any other one. Anyway, so the bottom line is supposed to be, so he's rebelling, and he's using his eloquence to rebel, so he's in the false counselors, in the fortress. That's all we need to say about that. And now we're getting to good. We're going to get to the bottom of hell anyway. We need to do that so that next time we're going to do the purgatory and the handouts about the Paradiso, remember, which isn't a whole lot to read. But the bottom of hell is fun and interesting too. So what happens if you live in the fortress, or if you live in the world as if you lived in the fortress? That is, you made your own choices about what you desired, and your own choices about what was worth doing and not doing, and you didn't pay attention to what the church and the Bible told you was what you were made to do. What would happen to you? Well, it's interesting that it's built into the Dante picture that what motivates people to act is the attractiveness of God. That's already in Aristotle. God is the prime mover in Aristotle, that it causes all movement by being so good and wonderful that it attracts everything to it. And then that's what makes the world turn and makes things move and so forth. And now, therefore, if it's true that open to God's attractiveness is the source of all motion, what will happen to the people in the city, in the fortress? Will they be able to move? No. In a certain sense, they will become more and more, as you go down and get worse and worse in your autonomy, you get weaker and weaker on this theory, because the only real source of movement is God's attraction, and you just rebelled against God's attraction. This comes up in, I always want to tell you these things, but then I haven't written them down, and so we have to find them. There's a place where, now we go to the, no, it's only in the purgatory. I'm going to talk to you about it next time, but I'll tell you. In purgatory, it turns out that they can climb the mountain of purgatory when God is shining on them like the sun, but at night they can't move. So in the inferno, when the sun isn't shining on them, there's a certain sense in which the worse you get, the less you can move. Until, what would you expect? If the Protestant Satan is all flying around in fiery attack on Adam and Eve and so forth, if that picture of Satan is yours, then and Satan is calling all these people to activity and so forth, that's not Dante's. What sort of hell does he think you would have? What sort of landscape again? You have to read it off the landscape. What will these people be doing? What will Satan be doing? You've read that far, right? Yeah. They're frozen in ice at the bottom. They can't move at all. That's just what you expect on this. As you go down, the people get more and more listless and paralyzed because they've cut themselves off from the only source of attraction and motion. You can't get away with this autonomy business. So you get people who get more and more only interested in very close selfish things, and they're able to move a little bit. And then you get the really bad people who are frozen solid into the ice. And you get Satan. Is Satan running around leading armies and breathing fire? No, Satan is absolutely cold. Satan is the bottom of the freezing. So as you go further and further down, you're less open to the attractiveness and fulfillment offered by God's love. And the more self-sufficient you become, the less you are moved by things. You can make a kind of pun. If you let yourself be open, you are moved by things. They're attractive, and they move you toward better and better life and more fulfillment. But if you're trying to give yourself all your directions and not be open to anything but what you choose, then you get more and more immobilized, and that's what's happening to them. Until they get to the very bottom, those are people who have turned against the people nearest to them, their children, their bosses, and so forth. And the final ones are ultimately frozen in the ice, unresponsive. Let's just read. And then Dante plays what I think is a little joke at the end. Remember, in his story, Satan, remember my picture, I don't want to draw it again, is frozen in ice at the center of the world, because Satan is the most immobile, just matter, really. Matter is, Aristotle already says, I mean, that gravity happens because matter seeks the center of the world, and at the very center of the universe, the earth is the center of the universe, and the center of the earth is sort of this prime matter, which is the most material stuff, and Satan is just frozen in there. Now, and here's what happens. At the middle of 285, let's see if I were anything I would want to read before then. Oh, well, you need to know that Satan does move a little bit. At the very beginning of Canto 34, just so you won't think I'm contradicting the text, he can move his wings. He's got wings and he flaps his wings, and that's what makes it so cold that everything freezes. It's sort of hell freezes over thanks to Satan's flapping. This is the very beginning of Canto 34. Like a whirling windmill seen from afar at twilight, and so forth, stirring up a wild and bitter wind. Satan was doing this. And they then have to get out of this bottom, and they have to do that. They've come to the very bottom of the world. Dante's got a great sense of sort of space and the relation of everything to everything. So they climb down from in the Inferno from Florence, and down here at the bottom is Satan, and he's sort of there, and now they're going to have to climb out over here. Well, so there's a moment where Dante's keeping track of all the spatial relations where they have to turn around because they've been climbing down, and now they're going to turn around and start climbing up. It sort of reminds me of 2001. Dante has like Kubrick had for 2001, a sense of all the relations of everything. So you know what the moon is what landscape on the moon you see when you see the earth over here and so forth. If you read the footnotes, you'll see Dante constantly explaining where their shadows are, when the sun rises, when the moon is eclipsed, and so forth. But this is the funniest one. So on page 70, in Canto 34, line 60, roughly. No, 70. Then, and this is Virgil now, then as he bade I clasp his neck, that is Virgil's, and he, watching for a moment when the wings were open wide, reached over dexterously and seized the shaggy coat of the king demon, grappling matted hair and frozen crusts from one tuft to another, clambered down. When he had reached the joint where the great thigh merges into the swelling of the haunch, my guide and master, straining terribly, turned his head where his feet had been and began to grip the hair as if he were climbing. Where was he? You're smiling. Have you really pictured it? Yeah, and what's at the center of the earth? The very center. The anus of Satan. He doesn't quite say it, but that's exactly what he's saying. And that's the bottom where the most unspiritual matter has finally gone. Okay, so now, where are we? We are ready for, the summing up again that they're frozen. I just read, the souls have refused everything for the sake of autonomy, so they're totally unresponsive and not moved by anything. So the most extreme ones are frozen up to their chins, and some of them are completely frozen under the ice, and that's where we are. So now I just have 5 minutes. Unless anybody wants to say something, I'm going to make the transition to purgatory. The transition you want to say something? Yeah, please. He wasn't frozen yet. I mean,
I've only read the book, but I'm assuming that when he first turned away from God, and then he was sent down to hell, and then he went back up to the Garden of Eden
to go up to the Garden of Eden and tempt people. He doesn't do that in Dante, I bet. That's a good question. I mean, you know things that I think. Keep your eyes open. Dante can't say that. Yeah, I think you're right. Dante has to say, when he went down there and led the rebellion and lost, he got put in that place where he is, frozen, period. I don't think, just as I say, keep your eyes open, I will too. I don't think Dante buys the Satan serpent tempting Adam and Eve story. I think that's already too much of the active Satan running around trying to get his armies together and lead the rebellion. You can't have that. How Dante's going to deal with that, I don't know. Okay, but I think it's a perfectly sensible question. And if anybody who happens to come across Dante telling us what Satan was doing when he was tempting Adam and Eve, please let me know. I'm going out on a limb and say that he can't explain it. Okay, now I'm just going to make a quick 5-minute transition to purgatory, so we've left hell behind. You don't have a hand up, is that right? No. Okay. So here we go. I'm just going to make some distinctions in the poetry. So hell was eternal torment that lasts forever. But purgatory is a kind of torment that is only for a limited time. Because purgatory is for people who have repented their mistaken lives that were unsatisfying and rebellious, and are now, or not all necessarily rebellious, some of them are, but some of them are just going after the wrong things, like Paula and Francesca. They're not rebelling, they're just terribly attracted to each other. But they're all living wrong kinds of lives, and they all have to go through a sort of retraining. A kind of, I don't have the right word for it. I said that last time I mentioned it. It's like dieting because you've been a glutton. What do you call that? What you have to do is develop new habits, and you have to sort of go against what you used to find attractive and resist it until it isn't attractive anymore. What? I couldn't. Yeah, rehabilitation, sort of. That's good. Yeah. What do alcoholics do when they are trying to get over? Is that called rehabilitation? Because that's what these people are doing. Just I want to get you the feeling. The people in purgatory are suffering not because it's a punishment, and not because it's imposed on them. They freely take on the suffering because they're addicted to something. They're either addicted to anti-God things inside the fortress, or they're addicted to the attractive things outside the fortress with more attraction than they should be. Paula and Francesca being the perfect example of that. For instance, the Paula Francesca kind of lovers pass each other walking in circles and give each other brief kisses as they pass. And the gluttons have this torture of Tantalus. They're showing all this wonderful food and drink, and when they try to reach it, it goes away because they're being forced to diet, and they've chosen to do that. And all kinds of things are different. It smelled terrible in hell. Now it smells fragrant. There was howling all the time in hell. Now there's singing. There was blasphemy in hell, and now there's prayer. There was darkness in hell, and now there's light. And these are all recovering addicts, and they're doing whatever they need to get over their addictions. Now let's see. I just have time to skim this to see if I need to say anything more about it. And they can get along only with God's help, and so they can only do this during the time when the sun is shining. God is like the sun for that. And otherwise they have to just sleep. We're told about that in here. And Virgil tells you all about this in the middle of the purgatory for a long time. Don't waste your time on it. I don't remember whether I assigned it or not. I hope I assigned it so I could tell you not to read it. Okay, so then let's see now. Okay, just to remember one more thing, and then we'll stop. That there are 4 stars in the sky if you see from purgatory, and those are the 4 pagan or antique or whatever classical virtues. What are they? Wisdom, temperance, justice, courage. That's it. Those are the 4, and there are 3 stars, and when they're shining, that's faith, hope, and charity, faith, hope, and love. And you've got to keep attending to when each of these is sort of shining on what's going on. Part of the landscape again, helping you understand what's going on without anybody being able to talk about it. Okay, I finished. We're ready to go on to purgatory and paradise last time. We're finishing Dante.